I hope that he wasn't scared, that it all happened pretty quickly.
For decades, he was the golden-haired troubadour of American folk music, a symbol of wholesome, natural beauty. John Denver's songs were the soundtrack to a simpler life, a collective yearning for mountain air and wide-open spaces. His voice, clear and optimistic, felt like a promise of peace, of love, and of a world untainted by cynicism. He was America's son, the boy with the guitar and the infectious toothy grin who sang of country roads taking him home. To millions, John Denver was the walking embodiment of Rocky Mountain High. But behind that warm smile, whispers of a darker story have persisted for years. Rumors of infidelity, of shocking outbursts of rage, and of a man consumed by the very fame he'd created. For a long time, many fans dismissed them as impossible, a cruel fiction that couldn't be reconciled with the man who sang with such tenderness. The truth, however, is that the most shocking stories didn't need to be validated by whispers or rumors. They were validated years ago by the man himself, in his own startlingly honest autobiography and through the public record of his turbulent life. John Denver painted a portrait of a man few people truly knew. The revelations didn't just add a new chapter to his story. They forced us to reread the entire book and confront the profound and painful chasm between the myth and the man. Before the turmoil, there was the love story. It began in 1966, long before John Denver was a household name. He was still Henry, John Deutschendorf Jr., a young musician touring with the Chad Mitchell Trio. Annie Martell was a college student in Minnesota, completely unimpressed by show business. It was this authenticity that captivated him. Their courtship was a 9-month whirlwind of letters and long-distance calls that led to their marriage on June 9, 1967. In those early years, money was tight, and John was constantly on the road. Annie wasn't just his wife, she was his anchor. Then everything changed. When Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded his song Leaving on a Jet Plane and it became a #1 hit, the doors to stardom swung wide open. By the early 1970s, with hits like Take Me Home, Country Roads, John Denver was a phenomenon. But as the myth of John Denver grew, the private reality of their marriage began to fracture. The success he'd dreamed of became a wedge driving them apart. In a 1983 interview, he confessed that they had started drifting away from one another, partly because of the time spent apart. For Annie, it was also a terrifying loss of identity. In a rare interview from that era, she confessed to feeling insecure and overwhelmed by her husband's fame, admitting she wasn't emotionally equipped to handle the seismic shift in their lives. The couple also faced private heartbreak. After struggling to have children of their own, they made the decision to adopt, welcoming their son, Zachary John, and later their daughter, Anna Kate. Denver adored being a father, once stating, "When I die, if they say I was Annie's husband, and Zachary John and Anna Kate's father, boy, that's enough for me to be remembered by." This growing tension came to a head during a brief separation. Miserable, John retreated to a ski lift on Aspen Mountain. In just 10 minutes, overwhelmed by a rush of love and remorse, he composed what would become his most enduring ballad, Annie's Song. The song was a poetic apology, a plea for reconciliation. For a time, it worked. It brought them back together. But the cracks in their foundation were already too deep. The public heard a declaration of eternal love. In reality, it was the beautiful, desperate echo of a love that was already getting lost. The love immortalized in Annie's Song provided a temporary reprieve, but it couldn't halt the downward spiral. In his 1994 autobiography, Take Me Home, Denver himself admitted to the very behaviors that fans had refused to believe. He confessed to being repeatedly unfaithful to Annie, betrayals that shattered the image of the man singing love songs to her on stage. His temperament, which friends knew could be moody, began to manifest as a frightening rage. The gentle, peace-loving environmentalist was, behind closed doors, a man who often felt an anger he couldn't control. This culminated during their bitter divorce proceedings in 1982. It was in his own book that Denver made his most shocking confession. In a moment of uncontrollable fury during an argument, he had nearly choked Annie, and then came the chainsaw. In what has become one of the most notorious stories in rock biography, John, consumed by rage over the division of their assets, took a chainsaw and methodically cut their marital bed in half. He admitted to this violent and symbolic act in his autobiography, a stunning desecration of their shared life that he felt purged his anger. The private chaos inevitably spilled into his public life. He was arrested multiple times for drunk driving. The FAA, the federal body governing his passion for flying, eventually took the drastic step of stripping him of his pilot's medical certificate. His second marriage, to Australian actress Cassandra Delaney, which began in 1988, was also tumultuous, ending in a bitter divorce a few years later. Denver wrote with startling bitterness about the union, stating that she managed to make a fool of me from one end of the valley to the other. The pattern was repeating itself, confirming the turmoil was a deep-seated part of his character. Before we get to the final tragic chapter of John Denver's story, if you're finding this look behind the music compelling, take a moment to subscribe. For more deep-dive stories into the hidden lives of music legends, the contrast between public personas and private realities often reveals the most human parts of these iconic figures. Now, let's explore how this long, slow-motion breakdown reached its devastating conclusion. The years following his divorces were a study in contrasts. Publicly, John Denver remained a committed activist and humanitarian, co-founding the WinStar Foundation and working tirelessly on conservation projects. But privately, the demons never left him. He wrestled with depression, and his struggles with alcohol persisted. His greatest solace was flying. It was a passion inherited from his Air Force pilot father, a sanctuary of freedom and solitude. But this sanctuary would become his final, fatal trap. On October 12, 1997, John Denver climbed into an experimental home-built aircraft known as a Rutan Long EZ for a short flight over Monterey Bay, California. He was 53 years old. The circumstances of that flight are chilling. Due to his prior DUI convictions, the FAA had revoked his medical certification, meaning he was not legally permitted to be flying. The aircraft itself was also new to him and had a critical design flaw. The fuel selector valve was placed awkwardly behind the pilot's shoulder, making it difficult to switch tanks while flying. As he flew over the Pacific, the inevitable happened. One fuel tank ran dry. It's believed that in his final moments, he was struggling to reach the valve to switch to the other tank when he lost control. The plane plunged into the ocean, killing him instantly. His death was not a freak accident, but the culmination of a life marked by impulsive decisions and a disregard for rules. The man who sang "Leaving on a Jet Plane" had taken his final tragic flight. John Denver's death sent a shockwave across the world. In the years since, the sanitized, wholesome myth has given way to a more complex and unsettling reality, largely thanks to the confessions he made himself. His own autobiography laid bare the infidelity, the rage, and the shocking incidents. With a candor that is still jarring today, his words compel us to re-examine everything. How do we listen to Annie's song now, knowing it was a beautiful apology written in the midst of turmoil and betrayal? It doesn't make the song less beautiful. Rather, it imbues it with a tragic depth it never had before. The lyrics: "Come, let me love you. Let me give my life to you," take on a new, poignant meaning when we understand the darkness they were trying to hold at bay. The easy narrative of the sunshine boy is gone forever, In its place is the story of a man who was a living paradox. He was a devoted environmentalist who found solace in nature, yet he was capable of terrifying acts of destruction in his own home. He wrote some of the most optimistic songs of his generation while battling private demons of depression, alcoholism, and rage. He brought joy to millions while causing immense pain to those closest to him. Greatness in one area of life does not cancel out the struggles in another. The beautiful, harmonious melodies that John Denver gave the world were real, but so was the discord in his soul. In the end, perhaps the most honest way to remember John Denver is to hold both of these truths at once. We can appreciate the light his music brought into the world while finally acknowledging the profound darkness he fought within himself, a battle that, in the end, he tragically lost.